if I can identify usage in my team that they already adopt tools, that's the best way to do it. So I build a process, then I see what would be the methodology to operate around that. And if needed, I implement a tool. All the tools today or the SaaS that have any freemium or free trial or whatever, these one are the one that will win.
Welcome to the Revenue Discussion Podcast. This podcast aims to inspire and educate the newest generation of revenue leaders on various subjects related to sales, marketing, revenue operations, and customer success. Every week, we invite an inspirational guest who is willing to share his or her insight, strategies, and tactics that has worked or still working for him or her. Today, we've invited Andrea Balducci to the show. If you don't know who he is, he's head of revenue operations at Sortlist. Sortlist is the leading EU B2B marketplace for service providers, such as marketing agencies and the like. And what I particularly like about my conversation with Andrea is that we have unpacked the role of RevOps. And I don't know if you know what RevOps actually is or revenue operations actually does, but if you are curious, listen carefully. And especially if you experience a lot of inefficiencies and misalignment in the different commercial departments. Welcome, Andrea, to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. As I said, yesterday was Deloitte Fast 50, so I'm a little bit tired, but excited to be here.
That's awesome, man. Deloitte 50. And so what does that mean? What did that bring you?
I think networking, that's really great there. Met some really nice startup scale-ups in Belgium. That's the most interesting part. But back in time when we won the prize, because this year we didn't win the prize, but we were among the Fast 50. I think the most interesting part is the employer branding. So people started to apply to our company. They were interested by our company. So we had so many talents coming knock at our door, and that was really cool. That was the biggest impact that it has in our company back in time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, in times where war for talent is on fire, I think that's pretty cool to have.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, well, Andrea, I'm super glad you're on the show because you have been doing the sales at Sortlist, and you became kind of the VP of sales for Sortlist. Now you kind of moved towards the RevOps position, revenue operations, and you are my first guest coming from that revenue operations position. So I have a bunch of questions for you prepared. But first, before we start with that, can you introduce yourself a bit? What have you done? Where do you come from? And also maybe tell a little bit more about Sortlist.
Sure. So me in 2 words, I'm Italian Finnish. I born in Italy, grown up in Brussels, which is home today. And I went to European school. Then I did Solvay as a business engineer. And actually after that, I traveled for a few months in Argentina. And when I came back, one of my friends, Nicolas, told me, where are you working right now? And I said, nowhere. I just came back from, some backpacking, and he actually asked me to come to the office to present me what they were working on. And they started 6 months previously, and that was called Sortlist at the time, and it's still called Sortlist. And this is how I joined Sortlist. That basically, it's a B2B marketplace for marketing, advertising, creative agencies. So basically what we do is we simplified the process for any companies to easily search, find, compare service providers to accelerate this process. Normally it takes weeks, months to find the right social media agency, a mobile app agency, and so on and so forth. So we are an aggregator of data that really can simplify the choice between this jungle of providers. We help you get the one that is the best for you, for your budget, for your needs, for your industry, and everything based on data, AI, algorithm, but a lot of human as well, because we are 140 today, European leader in the B2B reviews and matchmaking platform. And I think what brought us there is definitely the human part, because we attach a really important, let's say, process to human touches. We don't do automatize everything. We really bring the customer and we help him throughout the journey with a human approach.
And maybe a question you get a lot, but how many agencies do you have then on the Sortlist platform?
The vanity metric would be 100,000 that there are listed there. There are even more than that.
Okay.
How many are being, let's say, claimed? What we mean by claim is that people really came and say, I want to take possession of my profile, is around 45,000. But regularly we work, I would say, with thousands of active agency every month. So that's kind of massive. And
that is massive.
Yeah.
I think we will have to do a second episode, Andrea, with the evolution. How did you start it with Sortlist and how did this evolve? Because I think that's super fascinating, super interesting stats there.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can learn from the Sortlist story.
For sure.
But today we are here to talk about revenue operations. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people, may have heard the term before, RevOps, revenue operations, but I don't quite can, define it or know what that means. So can you maybe, in your own words, kind of define or give a definition to what revenue operation is?
Yeah, and it's not an easy one, to be honest, because it's a ever-defining word, department, system. But I know that in the US it's kind of mature. In Europe is getting started and growing a little bit this trend. I love to start with the why and how and what. So I think why it exists, and we can define it as a department or a role. It exists to improve the revenue team, so marketing, sales, and customer success, team alignment, productivity, and impact. So I like to say, how can I help the revenue team to do their job better, faster, stronger, by removing friction when there is friction. How do we do it is mainly, if you have to remember about something, is there are three pillars, and this is data to bring insight to these teams. There are processes, because that's something that helps to scale this team, to remove friction, to go to repeatable things that works, and definitely tools. People think a lot of tools when they think about revenue operation, and you can think of CRM, marketing automation, this kind of thing that are the basics, the pillars of how you can then deploy your strategy, ops strategy. And finally, what it is, what do we do on the day-to-day basis is can be from CRM administration. You have to add some attributes, you have to sync some attributes, you have to build some dashboarding. But lately, you have to build workflows. But lately, I've been working a lot on the pricing aspect, so business modeling, freemium. What else is like self-served? This kind of thing that helps at the end the company grow faster without always needing more sales. If I can express that in that way, is a product-led growth. This kind of thing where you really try to enable some motion and some dynamics in the product per se that don't always need to go through a sales cycle to sell your product.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. There are many other things like forecasting, managing the tool stack, and so on and so forth. But that's recap it pretty well.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. I'm also a big believer in the theory of constraint, where the idea is that you have to discover what the bottleneck is of any system so that it can grow further. And so I think that's kind of also the responsibility of a RevOps, right? Really finding those bottlenecks, that friction, as you said, and remove it so that anything can continue and grow.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. I think a question a lot of people might be asking themselves is that, what is then the role of a sales enablement person? Because I mean, there sound to be a lot of similarities. So what is to you like the biggest difference between a sales enablement person and a RevOps?
Good question. I think if we take RevOps, as I said before, it's just a matter of scope, right? It's more I help marketing, sales, and customer success. I try to make them align because they are the same goal, and so it's generate revenue. If I take sales enablement, it's more, I would say, under the sales ops, let's say, hub. And for me, sales ops integrate have, for example, sales enablement, maybe sales tooling, and you have a sales data inside. But so for me, you have sales ops, and then below you have sales enablement. So it's more a hierarchy matter. So that's first point. Mm-hmm. Second point, to be honest, we don't have any sales enablement at Sortlist. Today, the sales manager are kind of doing the sales enablement. But if we had one, his main responsibility will be, first of all, content. Sales assets, meaning how can we have the best sales decks ever? How can we build the best customer stories, success, customer case studies, and so on and so forth. That's the first aspect, really, how to make sure that all the sales don't have to build their deck. The sales enabler is there to provide them all the content that will enable them to sell better. The second hub would be rather more the knowledge management. So how to make, and it can be really wide. So objection handling. There is a new feature, new product. How can I help the sales team be aware of everything about this new feature, the benefits, the advantage of these benefits, how to sell this feature, or the benefits out of this feature, even better. And last but not least, is responsible also for the onboarding of these people, of the salespeople. So the sales manager is there to coach the day-to-day, the field, and push the team to go above the limits. Whereas the sales enablement is really there to onboard new persons so that the sales manager can then take over from that. So is there to form, train this new person that comes. And in company that scale fast, you're better to have a sales enablement. Otherwise, you have your sales manager that is too much focused on the newcomers, but doesn't take time with the people that are on the field on every day, right? So this is a big complement of a sales manager for sure. And it really alleviates, it helps him to get less job in his plate by removing the content, the knowledge, and the onboarding of new sales.
Okay. No, interesting. And you also immediately framed the position of the sales manager and what his role kind of is. But I'm also kind of interested in your experience, because you started also kind of the head of sales at Sortlist, but then moved away from that position and went into RevOps. And so what was for you it's probably a very personal question, but what was for you then the reason you moved to that position and not stayed in head of sales?
Good question. I think that from day one, it was back in 2015. I did marketing roles at the beginning, and then at a certain point, we started to have some operations because we started to add a form in the website, and leads start to come, right? And we had to manage those leads, and we started to build operations. So the process, step 1, step 2, what do we do about that? So I was the first sales to manage all this, but as I was the only one, the big issue I had is, how can I demultiply myself? Because there was so much volume that I needed to try to automatize stuff, to systematize stuff, and so on. So I think back then I was already doing this sales operations job. I implemented HubSpot, I implemented Intercom. I started to automatize things so that I don't have to run everywhere. And I think it started already there. I wasn't as my background is business engineer. I'm more an engineer of the sales or the business than the manager that is on the field and coach the sales to do a better job, right? Gotcha. So that start from there. and little by little, I think 2 years ago exactly, I talked with the CEO, and we said that we had to create a new department. I brought up this idea actually because I think the
I was
CEO
going to ask.
never came with that, say, oh, we should build a sales operation role, right? But I said, actually, I'm doing already that without formalizing it. But I read a lot of blogs, and I said, this is exactly what I do on a daily basis, and this is what I like to do. Systematize, automatize, data processes, tools, and so on. So I think I need to do that, to grow that, and to make it a success. And
To make
honestly,
it
it's
happen.
not easy because it's today you have big departments that are marketing, there are sales, there are product engineering, and obviously ops comes a little bit like a little bit in between all these, but it's not an official kind of department, and it's an enabler. Is to back up these teams, right? Is to support these teams. You're not in contact directly with the customer, but your customer is the sales team. Your customer is the marketing team. So you're kind of a internal consultant where you have to prioritize what is the most impactful project that you have to build for this team to remove that friction, grow revenue, this kind of thing. But big scale projects. But I think, does it make sense? Does it answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the part of the reason why I was asking that question is that I think a lot of organizations now don't have a revenue operation person, and they might be thinking, all right, but that could be something that we should introduce, because maybe indeed, just like you, they are already starting systemizing stuff, putting automation sequences here and there, helping or having that person that helps to have less friction, but they don't have that that focus on, all right, maybe we should have one person dedicated into RevOps that will do all of that instead of all of us maybe kind of helping here and there. So no, yeah, you definitely answer my question there. Maybe another question that's also related to your personal experience, but you came from sales and then you moved to RevOps. Would it also be possible to not have any previous sales experience, in your opinion, and still do RevOps very well?
I would say definitely yes. As for me, the profile of a RevOps, SalesOps is, without going to the cliches, but Deloitte, McKinsey, or whatever consultant is a really good ops because he's analytical, he's technical. You need to have this kind of background where you love crunch data, bring up insights. You have to have a deep understanding of the business, and at the same time, you have to go on the more deep technological, technical aspects, right? So I would say it's a really benefit to have this sales approach. I think it's the perfect match. If you've already done some sales and you are technical, that's a perfect match. But you don't need it's not mandatory. You can have some roles that are I don't know, forecasting and planning. You don't need that much knowledge on sales, but maybe for sales enablement, better if you did some sales
would have
before.
some sales experience.
But there are some roles that are so data driven that you don't need that much. But to be honest, when I talk with some peers, they say they like to recruit people that were into sales before, because and again, that's my side. I still do sales on everyday basis. I shouldn't, but it for me is the best way to understand what is the pain that the sales and the customers are feeling at this moment.
That's interesting, because you say you shouldn't, but you still do, and I see the value of doing it. So why do you say you shouldn't?
It's not this you shouldn't. It's like how to explain that? It's not black or white. It's better if you have it, but it's not mandatory. Like when you have a job position, you say it's preferable to have some experience sales. I wouldn't put that on the mandatory things. I would put on, it's cool to have some sales experience. It's better. It's a bonus, right? But I'm super happy that I did some sales before, because when I build stuff, to help the sales team, I know what I'm talking about. I know that I've been there. I know what's the friction. I know what's the pain. I know what the customer feels at that moment. So if I understand well the customer and understand and well the salespersons, this is the best way to build the right things for them. So to come back to the example, I do some sales and I build the stuff also on what the pain I feel on every day and automatize stuff. I say, this could be automatized. I go to the sales team, say, what do you think about that? Would it be useful for you? And then they say, yes, definitely. And it's cool because I can really experiment at the same time on myself as well.
Yeah, what would be then your tips for people that have not had any sales experience before, but that would like to enter in revenue operations? How could they say that to the recruiting manager or to the sales manager that would recruit that position? What would you give there as an advice for them?
Enter in the company, do some sales for the 3 first months, and check every aspect of the sales cycle processes that are broken, and that will make you way more enthusiastic and excited about working to fix those issues.
Okay.
So I would say that you have to be, as you, I don't know, work in let's say in a supermarket, but you are in the offices, please go for 1 week or 2 weeks to see what happens on the field. I would suggest the same thing because you're there to back off this team. And if you don't know a clue on what they live every day, that's going to be hard to work for them, because you're their consultant. So you need to, they are your customer. So if you don't know your customer, and you don't know what he feels, that's problematic. So I would say mini introduction to sales. You don't need to do like a career in sales to understand it, but at least an introduction to say, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I like that one. Now, can you maybe give concrete use cases of your work to kind of visualize more the project that you are working on right now?
Sure. In which area would you prefer to hear something? I can talk about
maybe something,
pricing,
for example, yeah.
But it's not the best example because not every ops works on pricing. But let's start with pricing. So basically what happens is back in 2020 we had a kind of really rigid pricing, and we said we need to revamp this pricing, and so we started a big mission with some consultants also, and basically we went from really rigid pricing to a modular pricing that helped us to increase by 40%, like by not changing anything, by 37% to be precise, what we call the average revenue per account, ARPA. Wow. And how we did that basically is just to split our pricing. Instead of saying you have 3 packages, we say within these 3 packages, you have 4 products, and the person could choose which product they wanted. And this kind of amplified a little bit the selling basket. And that was one of the really nice move we did. This was one of the biggest projects I worked on, like back in 2020. Other concrete example, I think people like this one, is what we call internally the auto presentation. So we use a tool that is called Retool internally. That is a tool to build internal tools. And so basically
build internal tools.
Yeah, exactly. You can type it as Retool. So it grab some data on the database, and then you can build tools around your database. And what happened, we had a big pain is that we have a 3-step sales cycle. So we have a discovery, we have an advice, and we have a closing, negotiating step. Okay, we have kind of short cycles, but the thing is, our sales team, we want them to spend the most of their time with the customer and the least amount of time in administrative things. And so we had people complaining about how much it takes to build a presentation, because most of the time, we are a marketplace, marketing, advertising, digital agency, need data to say, is it interesting for my agency to invest in your platform? We need to bring up data. So what happened is, back in time, with the help of Olivier, that maybe will listen this podcast, we built a process to build a presentation. Instead of taking 1 hour and a half to go on Tableau, taking the data, putting on a presentation, and so on and so forth, we brought up this tool that in some clicks, like you could do it in 5 minutes, you had a perfect presentation with really super customized data for the agency, and some customized also maybe pains, challenges, goals, and plans that the agency had in a presentation in 5 minutes. So imagine if you multiply that, we have 50 sales today. If you multiply per presentation, per 50 sales, the time that we make the team win was massive. The downside of that, if I can, because I like to speak about reality, is that it got broken. So at a certain point, we change our pricing, we change our branding, we have to rebuild all that, right? And because of lack of time, we didn't rebuild it. So that's the downside of those really super cool things, is that they work, but they get broken, and you have to rebuild them or to revamp them, it's kind of
there's a maintenance cost of it, and
exactly. So
you don't think of that when you start building.
Exactly. Yes. That's we tend to underestimate the amount of work that there is after building a tool. You have to maintain it. It's a massive amount of time that you have to consider also in your let's say project development, internal project development.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that's an amazing use case. And you said also something very interesting is that you are maximizing the customer facing time. Is that something that you always take in consideration when you go into a project like this, or it really depends?
For me, it's rule number one. You pay sales to spend the most of the time with customer. It's a fundamental. So in any project, you try always to remove friction for them to do stuff in any system, like HubSpot, etc. You try to automatize stuff so that they don't have to do manual inputting, errors. You try to minimize that. You have to think as a logistic chain. You have to reduce the maximum the errors, the mistakes, the time that they do manual stuff. So you automatize everything that is automatizable. I don't know if the word exists. And you try to make them spend the most of the time with the customer, and that's a fundamental. So I would say that I think always about that when I build something for the sales team.
I have maybe an interesting question, or at least I'm interested in your point of view. But I know that I will call ourselves now for this question process engineers. I know that we process engineers like to put everything in a linear sequence. You have first step 1, then you have step 2. There's a gap in between, and you want to minimize this gap. But in sales, I feel that it's not linear at all. It is really multidimensional. It goes all the way. And how do you try to cope with that, or how do you still look at sales when you're now in that RevOps position?
Tricky question. So what you mean is that, for example, a buyer journey doesn't ever look like discovery, let's say advice and close, right? It could go
exactly.
He go to check your reviews, then he go back, he talk with some other customer, he's not satisfied, and you say that
and also the sales process itself can maybe take 5 calls instead of 3, and how do you try to play with that?
I should think about it. I don't have an answer for you today. But to give an answer straight away, again, there are some things that you cannot, schedule or that are not predictable for sure. You try to do your maximum to forecast the best way you can. You try to modelize the best you can with your conversion rates and between one step to the other. That your sales cycle lasts in average 4 40 days, and you try to stick to those, let's say, figures. And then we know that customers are human and it's irrational and it can go on all the ways, but you always try to, my answer would be stick with the process. What I mean by that, but because if you put a process and you know that in X% of the time it's successful, and you try to improve that over time, for me is the best way to go, right? Because there are all these externalities, as you say, and all those things that you cannot predict, that you won't ever be able to do it. So you're doing the best with what you have and with the system that you implement, and try to iterate to make it better every time. So to talk more concretely, for example, we introduced beginning of the year a new sales process and new sales methodology. So we involve all the teams and account executive mainly, because it was for new business sales. We drafted together with 3 workshops what is all the steps that the buyer goes through during his selling process, right? And they say, they do that. They go to Google, they go to or Trustpilot reviews to check our reviews. They maybe contact, and we put all that in a map. And so we start to say, how can we the best,
accommodate their buying journey.
How can we help this person go from one step to the other, instead of trying to push him, just helping go to one step to the other, and that's it. So we build that, and that's from there. It helps me understand what is now the real process if everyone follows, and I know exactly what is the conversion rate within one step to the other, and yeah, I think that's the best way to go, is to hear also what your sales has to say. Otherwise, you build a rigid system that nobody follows, and that's the worst thing it can happen. If you hear what they have to say and how it happens really, maybe you can, try to be as near as possible to the reality, as you said. Maybe it's 5 calls, not 3, 2. That's the way I go.
There's always an average that is true. When
Exactly.
when you work on a project like Retool, like the pricing strategy, now you implemented a new sales methodology, sales process. What made you think of those projects in the first place? Did you look in the data and you saw there's some irregularity, a gap that was too big perhaps, and you thought, maybe we should work on that? Or what's the process behind that?
Most of the time we start with some discussion, maybe with my manager, who is the CEO. We try to check data, where are the frictions, maybe churn is going up. Let's analyze that. Let's see how we can reduce that churn. This is how we always start with data. So we have a really deep knowledge of what's going on our platform with thanks to Tableau. We have BI tool that really enable us to see everything, to pilot the activities and so on and so forth. So everything starts from the data. Starting from there, for example, why we started to work on pricing, because we analyzed the fact that we were selling too much the first, let's say, the bronze tier. So we were really selling every time the minimum tier, and was representing too much of our customer base. And we had also an issue of churn with that plan, because it wasn't the best performing plan. So we said, how can we find a way? How might we build a new pricing system that better distribute people between these tiers and make them more successful? Because we know that in upper tiers, they are more successful and they churn less. So basically, that was why we worked on pricing, for example. To give you another example of, I don't have any other example for now, no.
No, but that's a very good example. I like it. And you also mentioned a couple of times that you guys are using Tableau as really that one true source of data. And so I have to ask, because I know that data is super important for anyone that is in revenue operations. And so what would be for you like the most important metric, KPI, or the thing that you check weekly because it is just that important for the business?
For us, it's MRR, so monthly recurring revenue. Yeah, that's definitely the one that I check the most. So how is evolving and what I call net new MRR. So basically is to understand how much we're growing. So is all the new MRR minus churn,
The churn.
minus
Okay.
downgrades, plus expansion. So it's an equation of four metrics. It's new plus expansion minus churn minus downgrades. So this is for me the best metric you can follow because it's really what matters because it's an equation of all the metrics you need to check. And if your churn is really high, you can sell as much as you want, but that's for me is the first metric you want to fix, right? So so net new MRR, what we call it, I think in the jargon of subscription businesses.
Yeah, MRR, I've heard it, so many times before, but the net new aspect of it, making it a sum of four different factors. Interesting. You said it earlier as well that as a RevOps, you also, you had data, you had processes, and you have tools. And so talking about that tool aspect, because I know that the sales tech landscape, is immense. It's growing with time so fast. So how do you try to create visibility in what is relevant, what is not relevant, or how do you start and think of tools?
I like to put it in another way. I always start with what is the biggest pain that the sales team is having right now. See if I can build a process. And process means like, I don't know. Let's say that they want a compensation plan, let's say. Because they want to be incentivized to close and you want to drive your activities to sell more of this type of plan. For example, we're launching right now a new plan that is called value-based plan. So it's more based on the value. So a new pricing again, but I won't talk about that today. And we have to do maybe a new compensation plan. Imagine, and we don't have any compensation plan. What I would do is to say, okay, what would be the process? You have to see all the sales they've done. You have to report them on something, etc. So I build a process. Then I see what would be the methodology to operate around that. And if needed, I implement a tool. But if needed, because sometimes we don't start with the tool because maybe a spreadsheet is enough and it's working perfectly fine, right? And again, a spreadsheet is a tool, but is kind of the most let's say extensive or flexible tool ever. And then I start with a spreadsheet. When it gets broken, then I check, okay, that's the step number 2. We say, okay, this process is broken. It's really too manual. It gets a lot of errors. So let's see if there is any
cost
solution
related to that.
Yeah, exactly. The cost, maintenance, again, issues, human salary, because you have to pay the person that manually check all these.
True.
So I see if I can externalize that. And most of the time to be honest, I go to this platform that you might be aware of. Is G2 or Capterra that actually reference a lot of SaaS. It's they're doing the same thing as us actually, but for software. We do for service providers, B2B service providers. And so I use my same, let's say, company, but for other matters. And definitely they help a lot to find out what's the best for you and what is the most reviewed and so on and so forth. I use a lot Product Hunt as well. I don't know if you're aware of, but lovely marketplace to see what are the new trends, new things, and so on. And then there is a lot of referrals as well. I mean, there are or sales that contacts me a lot also. I have a lot of sales outreaching to sell them.
I was actually going to ask that question. Because you do like to go on those calls and discover what they have to say, or do you say no, only when I need it?
I definitely don't like to. I'm kind of the buyer that loves to. And I think as a lot of buyers today, I like to put hands on things, try it by myself. See if it brings value, because as I was a sales for 5 years, so I know what I like, what I don't like. And so all the tools today, or the SaaS that have any freemium or free trial or whatever, these one are the one that will win me. Why? Because otherwise I cannot test it. I cannot bring my team to test it if they want to see if it has value for them or not. And that's for me, maybe is my best answer, is before implementing any tool, I make sure I don't want to impose any tool to my team. I make sure that actually I go check to my team and say, are you using any free tool right now? And I discovered that they were using, for example, are you aware of Apollo? It's kind of a prospection tool.
Yeah.
Like Lucia, you have some data enrichment, you can send sequences. And they were using the free version, and there were 3 of them. So if I can identify usage in my team that they already adopt tools, that's the best way to do it, because if they naturally go towards something, it means that they have a pain that they're trying to solve with a tool, and then I'm more than happy to buy licenses there. And instead of me proactively going to search for the new solution, right? That's for me, because one of the biggest pain as a RevOps you have, one of the biggest challenges is adoption for tools, is make sure that everyone is using well the tool, making sure that everybody is maximizing the value they get out of this tool. So if they or naturally go through our tool, that's the best thing ever.
Yeah, I think it's adoption in the three elements, right? Data, processes, tools. They can maybe not fill in their CRM and the data that you need. Maybe they don't work according to the process that you designed. But again, that's also interesting feedback for you, I guess, to know how you can still work around it. I mean, yeah, is it then the sales that need to adapt, or is it you that should adapt? The internal processes, systems, and tools. It's who. Is it an adoption issue, or is it just an implementation, that is too challenging for the team? That's also maybe a...
I try to do my best to set things that is the easiest for them, but at a certain point, systems are kind of rigid. So I've learned with talking with people is that it's always easier to adapt the people to the system than the other way around. Because it can be really costly to really too much work on the system. So if you train those people and you incentivize those people to say, okay, this is for you. I mean, I'm not imposing you anything. It's for your best. It's to reach your goals. It's to reach your quota. And this is, by the way, I have this power user, this sales that is using the solution, and he increased by 20% his win rate this last quarter. What do you think about it? This is how you bring up things, because otherwise, if you just say, take this tool, use it, it won't work, because people have a lot of friction, a lot of internal objection about why I should use the tool. I have a concrete example. Is Mojo, is like Gong, is a conversation intelligence tool. We had some hard times to implement it, because people sometimes were reluctant to record their calls, as we're doing now. They don't want to maybe show to everybody how they are shy. They don't want to bother the customer to ask him, is it okay to record? All these things you have to educate the team to be at their ease to do that. So it took a lot of time. Now it's working really well. But it took some time. So it's kind of, I would say maybe not at that far, but sometimes you have to do some psychological role. You have to make sure that you understand them. What is the deep root cause of why you're not using that one? Because it can, and it takes time. But it's super rewarding when it works at the end.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting insight, and again, you maybe have answered my my next questions, because I had a question here prepared, which is, what mistakes have you made in the past that have taught you a lot? Maybe that would be an answer, but maybe you can still come with another answer.
I think the one of the mistake I've done is to build stuff on my side, like and not verifying that there was a real pain. So I think could apply to product, but as we're building product, let's say product or tools for my customer, a salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
always verify that there is a real issue, a real problem before building anything. So I now I don't remember what was the exactly use case. But yeah, but definitely I built something that nobody ever used. So it was kind of depressing because I worked that for a few days and I was so excited. Voilà. I remember now. It's a ROI calculator for agencies. Okay.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I worked on that on a spreadsheet. Cool. It looks super nice, super neat because I found that some other companies were doing that. And actually I launched it. I was so excited about it. Adoption, like, maybe 2-3 people use it once, twice, and that's it, And that's kind of depressing. You say, okay, maybe I didn't pinpoint the real pain. I didn't ask them if they really need it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that they were needing it, but actually not. So always talk with your team, talk with the management of your team, and ask them what is the biggest challenge or the biggest pains they're having right now, and build around it. Because otherwise, it's a big mistake to try to build a cool next thing that nobody will use.
Yeah. You see there the same principles as design thinking that you would use in a product development setting.
Mm-hmm.
Here again, also because as you said, your customers is the sales team or the revenue team in general, and so you should understand what their pains are.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Exactly.
maybe one last question is, you are pretty knowledgeable about RevOps, but it's still kind of new. So where do you go to learn more about that? Where do you find great resources?
I Googled it at the beginning. I started by Google. And now definitely the communities helps me a lot. So if I could choose maybe two, one is French. For the French speaker is a business operation network. So 90% of the people there are from French scale-ups.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me it's super cool. There are so much, like, for me it's the best community out there for ops. And then there is another one more US based, but it's more advanced, I would say, because they are more advanced than us in Europe. Is RevOps Co-ops. I can maybe send it to you so you can link it, but it's RevOps space comma, not comma, but tire ops. And these are the community I used to. Then I would recommend, if they want to get a taste of what it is, go to HubSpot. They have a training about HubSpot, about RevOps.
Okay.
They have also a community, and I would go there to have a taste of what it is. That's
a good way to start. You've talked about the difference between sales enablement and RevOps, but what would you say about sales manager versus RevOps?
I like that question, and so a lot of people ask this question, definitely, and I like to do analogies, metaphors. And if you go back in time with Spartans in Greece, those were warriors. I think them as the sales people, the individual contributors. And then you have people on the horse, the generals that actually help those people to motivate them, coach them. They're on the field. They're not always battling, but they help them maybe to better go to battle. And so definitely coach them, motivate them. This is the sales manager for me. And I'm in the background, maybe in a little place where definitely I don't go to the field, but I build the weapons that are the best for this battle. That, for example, and these would be the tools, I would say maybe. Mm-hmm. I also help them strategize the battle. So I know that in the previous 6 or 7 battles, we attacked from left, and we won 9 times out of 10, right? So that's something I would definitely say, guys, we should do that. This is the process we will follow in this battle. Uh-huh. And last but not least is also more in the sales enablement side, as we said it before, is all the new warriors that want to join forces. I onboard them and I train them make them and acknowledge them to make them warriors that they can go to battle after. So this is the analogy I like to do between the difference between ops that is really helping in the background versus the field where there you have sales manager and sales that are battling every day in this war.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy.
Exactly. Yes.
Thanks for that. All right. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to chat with you about RevOps, if they want to meet you, where would you send them to?
LinkedIn, classic answer, but definitely Andrea Balducci on LinkedIn. I post a lot about RevOps, but also about agency, about sales. So if they want to connect, feel free.
I can definitely recommend to follow Andrea for RevOps content, because that's also what pushed me to invite him on the show. Very, very good content, Andrea.
Thank you so
very
much.
Very good approach.
Ian, and was really cool to be here. No, not finished. Okay.
I have one last question, and you might like this one, but actually, if Andrea was a brand, what would it stand for?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. So what would be my mission, my why, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Professionally talking, or again in the private life, I'd say what I stand for.
Yeah, it can be both. Really, it's indeed suppose that Andrea is not here anymore, and 5 years later we still think of Andrea that way, because that was you, that was your brand.
Tricky question. I would say the person. I mean, Andrea. I stand for actually helping people doing their best thanks to technology. Let's say to give them superpowers. I like really the analogy. I don't know if you see the Mario, the flower, and then you have Super Mario, right? I like to think of how I want every day to make people become this Super Mario, and how I do that is through the flower, right? And I bring them the flower so they become this Super Mario. So, and that's what I stand for, is to have, enabling people to do their job better, and business people, I would say, marketing, sales, and customer success. And this again goes through technology, data, processes, automation, and this is what I stand for.
I like it. No, I will take that answer. Providing the superpowers. Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, and excited to see what is the result of this podcast.